Okay, good Tavach, everyone. Welcome. As we are sponsored by A.B. Spry and family for the safety of our troops, for Shimon Klein, Leilanish Masasharan Shimon Yehuda, Gittel Shimon Pinchas, and by Irving Fishbaum for Issa ben Razel and Eliezer ben Razel. We also learn tonight by Stephen Holtzman, Lila Nishmas Mindel Bas Pesach HaLevi, from Meir ben Chayesar. They should have a Refuah Shalema, V'sei Shechel Yisrael. We welcome in over here Saba and Stephen Holtzman and Aaron Swade and Irving Fishbaum, Mel Zachter, Eddie Chazan, A.B. Spry, Israel Fisher, Yitz Fuchs. We welcome in Nachman Chapler, Dr. Block, Shimon Klein, Shimon Deer, Moshe Lehman, Naftali Javelin, Shmuel Shmulowitz. It's great to have you. Yossi Rezepkowitz, Rabbi Kranz, Yitzi Muller, Chaim Braun, Ilya Shutman, Abba Steinhauser, David Helfgott, and here in Shul we have Reb Blumenfeld and give me your names, Reb Schechter. Aryeh Schechter, Yisrael Meir Schechter, Gedalia Engel, Ruvain Shanet. Welcome everyone. We are starting 2 lines from the bottom of Daf Pei Dalin Amid Beis. We're talking about the question of whether one is chayiv to pay for a burn where there's no permanent, where there's no wound on the person's body. So the Gemara now explains a different way of looking at the machlokes as we welcome in Dr. Guy. Inami, the kuli alma kviya, when it says kviya tachas kviya, burn instead of a burn, bein the ispei chabura, bein the lespei chabura mashma. That itself would be mashma whether there's a wound or not. And the question is, where the generalization and the specification are distant one from the other. You see, if it says kviya tachas kviya and chabura tachas chabura, but they're not next to each other. Now, kviya tachas kviya would be a klal, and chabura tachas chabura would be a prat. And then if they would be next to we would use the rule, klal prat ein b'chlal elamashe b'prat, and then it would only be if there's a wound, and not if it's not. But they're distance from each other. The psukim of kviya tachas kviya and chabura tachas chabura are not next to each other. Rebbe Savar ain't done in Oisei b'chlal prat. We don't use it as a klal prat, and therefore we don't limit it to only where there's a wound. Ben Azai Savar done in Oisei b'chlal prat. We do use the rule of klal prat, even though they're far from each other, and therefore it's ein b'chlal elamashe b'prat. If there's a chabura, yes. If there's not a chabura, not. Now the Gemara asks, then according to Rebbe, where kviya tachas kviya means whether there is a wound, whether there is not a wound, so then according to him, chabura tachas chabura l'Rebbe lamali, what does it add? Says the Gemara l'damim yisayrim, to tell you that where there's a wound and a burn, you pay both for the tsar of the burn and the payment for the wound itself. Oimdin kama adam kiyaytzi b'zeh roitzelito. We said that for pain you pay and you evaluate how much a person would agree to accept such pain. So the Gemara says, tsar b'mokum nezek heichi shaiminon. How do you evaluate pain where there's damage and the pain? Amar Avud Shmuel, oimdim kama adam roitzelito. How much a person will be willing to pay. Liktoya lo yadai. Oh, welcome, Barish. Good to have you back. How much would a person pay to have you cut off his hand? Says the Gemara, that doesn't give you a evaluation of the pain. That gives you an evaluation of the hand. There, loitzar lechudei, liktoya lo yadai, loitzar lechudehu. That doesn't give you an evaluation of the pain. Hakulu chamisha dvar mika. You have all 5 things. You have baishis, you have It doesn't give you the evaluation. That doesn't give you a assessment of the pain. Says the Gemara, and furthermore, who's going to be so foolish to accept pain, to have his hand cut off? He had a hand that was useless. The nerves weren't working, and it's, so to speak, a paralyzed hand. So how much would a person pay to have his hand cut off? Says the Gemara, there that involves both tsar and baishas, because it's embarrassing for him to have his hand cut off and thrown to the dogs. Says the Gemara, that doesn't give you an evaluation of only pain. There's pain and embarrassment and humiliation. Why? This ksifale milsa, it's embarrassing to him to take from his flesh and throw it to the dogs. Ella aimdim kama adam reitzalita liktoya lo yodai hamuchtav lemalchus. How much a person would be willing to pay to have his hand, which is supposed to be cut off as a punishment by the government, bein sam l'sayif, to switch it from using a anesthesia, which would be painless, to cutting it off with a knife. Says the Gemara, Amrei hachi nami lo yishakal mitzar nafshe. Nobody was willing to do that and have himself in such agony. Ella oimdim kama adam reitzel lital. How much litain? How much would a person give to switch it from a knife to an anesthesia? Liktoya lo yodei amuchtav lamalchus bein sayif l'sam. To switch from just cutting it off with a knife or using a medicine which would be less pain. And that's the value of the pain. So then the Gemara says, so then it should say how much a person would give, not how much a person would take. Hi litol, litein mebayele, says the Gemara. No, this is what it means. That the victim takes from the assailant, from the one that does damage, what the victim would give in order to avoid to have such pain. Ripui, when it comes to curing, if you hit him, chayiv l'raf asay. Now, the question is, what happens if sores develop, or sores. Sores. Says the Gemara, Tanrabanan, alu bait smachim. If sores or blisters come up, machmas amaka or vinister amaka, or the wound reopens, chayiv l'rafaisa, you have to heal it. The one who did the damage has to heal it. The chayiv litin like demei shiftai, and he has to also pay for the temporary unemployment while it is healing. Shalai machmas amaka. But if the sores are not because of the wound, eina chayiv l'rafaisa, he doesn't have to cure him. Eina chayiv litin like demei shiftai. Rabbi Yehuda says, af machmas hamaka, even if the sores came from the wound that he gave him, chayiv l'rafaisa, he has to cure him, but ve'ena chayiv litin like demei shifta, he doesn't have to give him for his further unemployment. V'chachamim aimim shifta v'refuusai, they're totally one in the other. Kol shechayiv b'shavas, if he's chayiv to give unemployment, chayiv b'ripui, he's chayiv to heal him. V'she'ena chayiv b'shavas, but if he's not chayiv in unemployment, eina chayiv b'ripui. So what's the argument over here? B'may kamifligi. Amar Rabba ashkachtinu l'rabbanan b'bei Rav. I found the rabbis in the Beis Medrash, the Yosvei v'ka'amrei, and they were sitting and saying, here the question is whether we allow you to put a bandage on the wound. Now, putting the bandage on the wound is more comfortable because it doesn't bang into things and it doesn't get hurt. But when you cover it and block it away from the air, it's more likely to develop a sore. As we welcome in Pesach Siegelman for our 27th Zoomer of the evening, Says the Gemara. So here the question is, and Pesach we're holding by the first intermediate line on Daf Pei Amud Aleph. Whether we allow one to bandage the wound. Rabbanan Savri Maka Nitna Leged. You could bandage it. Rabbi Yehuda Savri Maka Loy Nitna Leged. No, don't bandage it because it could develop sores. So, Ripui, where it says it twice, Rapo Yerape, the Tone Bekra, Mechayev. Even though you bandaged it, which you shouldn't have done, you're still chayiv to heal it. Sheves, the Loy Tone Bekra, it doesn't repeat, it doesn't say, it says Shifta Yeshalim, but it doesn't say Sheves twice. Loy Mechayev. If you bandaged it improperly, we don't make the mazik pay. And I respond no. If you're not supposed to bandage it, well then it's the nizik's fault. Then you wouldn't be mechuyev to be merapid either. Listen, the victim was negligent. You're not mechuyev to pay for the victim's negligence, for the nizik's negligence. Everybody holds you cover it. You don't want dirt to fall in the wound. You don't want the wind to blow into the wound. Everybody holds you could bandage it. But you're not supposed to bandage it too much, because if you bandage it too much, it's going to get hot, it's going to develop sores. Rabbi Yehuda Savar came into loy nitna le'eged yisera, since you're not supposed to bandage it heavily. Ripui the tanabekra, ripui, which the pasuk repeats, rapa yerape, mechayiv. Sheves the loy tanabekra, which the pasuk doesn't repeat, loy mechayiv. Rabbanan savre, the Rabbanan say, came in the tanabekra ripui, since it repeats ripui, and it says sheves right next to ripui. Sheves nami mechayiv, you're chayiv for the unemployment too. The iskish ripui. Rabbi Yehuda savre sheves loy mechayiv. Why? It's a hekish, but Shevetz is a miyat. The mate rachmana rak shifta yitain. So that miyat tells you that if the nizik is negligent and he made a eged yisera, you don't have to pay for the unemployment. V'rabbanan rak. What does the rak come to tell you? L'shalei machmas hamaka hudasa. That's coming to tell me that if the sores come not machmas hamaka, that you don't have to give it. Says the Gemara, that means that he holds that you're talking not chayiv if you did eged yisera even for ripui. So then why does it say v'rapa yerape? Ripui the tani beikra, ripui that the pasuk repeats v'rapa yerape lamali. Oh, that's a famous drasha. He uses it for the Tana Debei Rabbi Yishmael. The Tana Debei Rabbi Yishmael, the Tanya Debei Rabbi Yishmael, Omer v'rapa yerape. I might think that although you could cure someone, of course, if they're damaged by somebody, but if they get sick, b'dei shemayim, I might think, listen, if Hashem wants them to get sick, you shouldn't interfere. I might think that you shouldn't interfere from the Ratzon of the Rabbi Nishlam. Mekan sheniten rishus l'roifei l'rafais, that a roifei could heal people, and we don't say don't get involved. If the Rabbi Nishlam wants a virus is a virus, don't get involved. Tan Rabbanan minayim shim olu beit tzmachim. How do we know if there is sores? Machmas hamake, or v'nister hamake, or if the wound opens up, reopens, shechayiv l'faisai. That you're chayiv to cure him, b'chayiv litin lo shiftoi. Talmud leim rak shifta yitain v'rapa yerape. So it says that you should, and it repeats to tell you that you're chayiv even if the wound develops sores. Yakal afilu shaloi machmas hamaka. I might think that you do it even if it's not from the hit. Talmud leimer rak. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda imer af machmas hamaka potter. Even if it developed because of the maki, you're also potter. Shenema rak. Now, what's he talking about? Some say when he says potter, it's talking about that he's patur in ganzen, because he holds that the only time you're chayiv for ripui is where you're chayiv for sheves. And since it doesn't repeat by sheves, you're not chayiv for sheves, you're not chayiv for ripui either. So some say that this is going, says Gemara, Ikid Amrei Af Makmas Makapater Legamrei, that's Kirabanan Basrai. The Ikid Amrei, when it says it's pater, it just means for unemployment. Af Makmas Makapater Misheves. But B'chaya B'ripui, Kaman Kavur, like his father Rabbi Yehuda, who says that Ripui, where it repeats it, you're chayiv. Where it doesn't repeat it, you're pater. And Rabbi say we welcome in Mark Frankel, who managed to make it. I know it was a long trip from Bela Kinwood. Is he coming in here? Oh, here he is. No. And Bruce Eisenberg. Let's make a bracha on Bruce Eisenberg. Okay. Bruce, we've been missing you. Yeah, I guess you have to come during the week now. That's all. That's the only eitzah. For Bruce and Mark, we are holding by the two dots, and we are on towards the bottom of Pei Amud Aleph, just getting started over here. 9 lines from the bottom of Daf Pei Amud Aleph on a beautiful Motzi Shabbos, as Berish Gesseman has rejoined us. Put glue on his seat. I didn't need to put glue on his seat. Aaron has been missing you. Says the Gemara, Amamar, Yochel afilu shaloi machma samaka. I might think that you're chayiv to pay even if the saw is not machma samaka. Says the Gemara, Talmud Leimer rak. Now, obviously, the question is, and Abe Arba comes in as our 30th Zoomer of the evening. Marshall is getting excited over here. 30 Zoomers, and we give him Ava Steiner, Robert Feiner, and David Helfgott, so he already has 33, and now Avi Shapiro comes as the 34th. I'm telling you, he's 16 away from bourbon heaven. I don't mind. Okay, I'm telling you, everybody get on the phone and call a buddy. Marshall is thirsty. Let's do it. Now, so anyway, what the Gemara says, why would I have a Havim that you're chayiv if it's not machma samaka? Imrei mai shaloi machma samaka. What does it mean that it's not because of Marshall slugging him? What does it mean? Kedetanya harisha over al divrei roife. You see what happened is Marshall slugged Chatzkel, and he paid for the treatment. And the doctor told Chatzkel not to have honey, because honey is not good. Sugar, they say sugar is not good. So Arisha over al divrei roife v'achol dvash, and he ate honey. I call mine mesika, or all kinds of sweets. Mibnei shedvash v'kol mine mesika, because honey and all kinds of sweets koshin lamaka. And now the hela makasa gargusni. The wound developed sores. So Yachol Yechayev l'Rafai. Say, I might think that Marshall should have to give treatment for those. I said gargusni. I meant it developed dead flesh. We're going to see that this means dead flesh. Yachol Yechayev l'Rafai. Say, I might think that Marshall has to pay more money. Talmud Leimer rak. Oh no, he didn't. Chatzkel didn't listen to the doctor. That's not Marshall's fault. Says the Gemara, my gargusni. What does it mean, gargusni? Rabbi nasa krichta, dead flesh. Now, anyway, what's the cure for this dead flesh? My asu say aloe. You should use aloes, vikira, and we're going to make a ointment made out of aloes, wax, vikalba, and the residual part of the wine barrels. The amalei now. Here, Marshall tells Chatzkel, I'm not giving you money for a doctor. I'll heal you. I'm a doctor. Amalei, so listen, Chatzkel knows Marshall. Amalei domis alike arye arva. You're like a lion waiting in ambush. I'm not letting you near me. The Amalei. So then Marshall tells him, "Ma'isina asya demagin b'magin. I'll bring a doctor that doesn't cost me anything." Marshall. This is Marshall. So he says, I got myself a cheap crony. Amalei. So Chatzkel says, "No, thank you. Asya demagin b'magin magain shava." A doctor that works for free is worth taka nothing. Says the Gemara, "V'i amar ma'isina lach asya rechika." If he tells him, "Listen, I got a doctor that's good. He lives far away. I'm going to bring him." Amalei asya rechika. A doctor that lives far away, eina avira, could make somebody blind. In other words, he's not worried about his reputation because he doesn't have a patient base from here. I want a doctor that lives here who is afraid to play around because then he's going to lose clients. That's why Marshall, he fixes cars. In Chicago, he fixes cars from Nebraska. So Chatzkel tells Marshall, "Give me the cash, and I'll heal myself." So Marshall met somebody of his same type. Amalei, he says, "I'm not giving you the money. Pashata b'nafshech. You're gonna waste the money. You're gonna get a quack. V'shakos minay tvei, and it's gonna cost me more money." V'i Amalei. So this guy starts to haggle with Marshall, and he says, "Kotzli, make a fixed price for me." He says, "No, I don't want to get a bad name." That's funny. Amalei, go shagain. For sure, I don't want that. The pashata b'nafshek, you're gonna neglect yourself and get yourself a quack. And then the Korali Shahamazik, you're going to tell people he's a damaging ox. Look what Marshall did to me. I don't want that. Tana, v'kulan mishtalmin b'mokam nezek. If you cut off his hand, you have to pay also the rest of the stuff, humiliation and embarrassment. So it says, Gemara Amar Rav Zivin Mishmei Minani Mili. How do we know this? Amar Rav Zivin Mishmei Rava Amar Kra Petza Tachas Petza. A wound for a wound, and that's an extra pasuk, a bang for a bang. Litein Tsar B'mokam Nezek. To tell you that you pay for pain, even though you pay already for the whole hand. Says Gemara, we learn out from Petza Tachas Petza, the din of Adamul La'ilam. Haime Bayale, that's needed as we already finished 1/4 of tonight's job, turning to Pei Hey Amid Beis. Mark says, I like this pace. Says the Gemara, Haime Bayale, the Rabbi Shoigeg Kamezid, that you chayiv even if it was unwitting, va'aynis karatzen, even if it was accidental. It's the law of Adamud La'ilam. Says Gemara, but then it didn't have to say tachas. Imke nichtav kra petza bepetza. The word tachas is extra. My petza tachas petza. Shmami no tarte. Rapapa mishmei de Rava amar kra. It says the double lashon virapa yirape. Now all of that to say is virapa. Why does it say virapa yirape? Litain refuah b'makam nezek. That you pay for the healing besides paying for the hand. Says the Gemara. But we use the Virapa Yirape for the din of Rabbi Shmuel. Haime Baile Lekidetana de Bei Rabbi Shmuel, the Tana de Bei Rabbi Shmuel. Virapa Yirape tells me that the doctor could heal someone, and you don't interfere with the will of Hashem. Mekanshin nit Rishusul Raife L'Rafais. Says Imke Nichtav Cover Raife Yirape. Why does it say Virapa Yirape? Shmamina. There also teaches you litain refuah b'makom nezek, that you, even though you're paying for the hand, you also have to pay to heal it. We learned out that it repeats v'rapa yirape to tell me that you pay if it develops sores. To repeat to tell me you're chayiv even if it develops a sore. Im kain lema kra o rapai or yirapai. Be consistent. My v'rapai yirapai. Why does it change? Mamina litain refuah b'makam nezek. That's how we could learn 3 things out from one phrase. Says the Gemara, Michlal. This implies the mishkachas luhu shaloi b'makam nezek. This implies that we could have it says that we give these things b'makam nezek. That means that implies that you could have ripui, tsar, sheves without having damage. So says the Gemara, Michlal de mishkachaslu shaloi b'makam nezek. Shaloi b'makam nezek heichi mishkachaslu. How do you have pain where there's no nezek? Tsar, says the Gemara, kediktani tzkavei b'shpud. If he burns him on his nail with a heated spit, or b'mismar, or he sticks a nail, vafilu al tzipornai, even on his nail, makom she'eino isachabur, where there's no wound. Ripui, where do you have healing without a wound? Davikov le midei, it's talking about a person that has pain. And Marshall comes, you should never let Marshall do this, V'solik v'aise le sama charifa, he gives him a sharp medicine to heal the pain, but because Marshall never went to medical school, so v'achvarei lebisrei, it caused, what? V'achvarei lebisrei, and it caused his flesh to become whitened. It caused his flesh to become whitened. The tzarech suve leisama, it's mashma that it's not tzaras. Because, what? Rashi said tzaras? No, the mara tzaras, not tzaras. The achvrei lebisrei, and it whitened his flesh. The tzarech suve leisama, he has to give him medicine lankute gavna de bisrei, to restore the color of the flesh. Obviously, if it would be tzaras, then it would be for healing the tzaras. That's not what it means. It just means to restore the color. Sheves, where is there unemployment without damage? Simple. The hot gave in Deruna, he locked him in a room, and therefore he made him miss his job. So he has to pay for the sheves even though he didn't do any damage. Boishes is the raklei ba'ape, where he spat in his face, so there's no damage, there's only humiliation. Sheves, unemployment, we view him as if he is a cucumber watchman. We already explained this, that here's a person who used to pitch for the New York Mets. He cuts off his hand, so he's going to pay him the $1 million for 20 years that he would have got. So he pays him $20 million for his hand. But he also has to give him unemployment. Now, when he's sick, he won't be able to be a cucumber watchman. Because when it gets better, he can't pitch anymore. And the fact that he can't pitch, that was included in the nezek. But now, while he's in bed, he can't even be a cucumber watchman. So he has to pay for a cucumber watchman. So the Gemara has a problem over here because the Gemara thinks that without a hand, he could be better than a cucumber watchman. Says the Gemara, Tan Rabbanan Sheves Rayna said Kilu Shaimer Kishuan. V'im Timer Loksa Midas Hadin. It's not fair. That's not fair. The Chi Mitpach, when he gets better, Hi Gavra Lav Igra de Shemi Kishuan Ishakal. He's not only going to take a cucumber watchman, Eladoli Davla, he'll still be able to fill up buckets with his other hand. V'shakal Igra. Inami Ozil B'shliach, he could be a courier. V'shakal Igra. So the Gemara says no. When a person is missing the hand, he can't do this work. Midas hadin loylaks shekvar nasalei dmei yadav v'dmei raglei. So what he could have done with his hand, we cannot. That he doesn't have to pay for, and without his hand, he won't be able to be a courier, and he won't be able to draw water and for irrigation. Amarava kata es yadai nasalei dmei yadai. If you cut off his hand, you give him the value of his hand. Visheves, and the unemployment, Ryan Isai Ki'ilu Shaimer Kishuim. We view him as if he is a cucumber watchman. Shiber as Ragla, you break his foot. So now he can't be a cucumber watchman because he can't walk around the perimeter of the field. So then Noisenlai Demei Ragla, Visheves, and unemployment, Ryan Isai Ki'ilu Shaimer as HaPesach. He could sit in front of a door. Simes Einai, if you blind his eye, Noisenlai Demei Einai, you pay for the eye. And Sheves, listen, even when he's blind, he could work with a mill. That he grinds with a mill. Chirsha, if he's deaf, a deaf person who you can't give instructions to, is not worth anything. Chirsha, you pay for everything. Because there isn't an unemployment, because even when he gets better, he's not going to be able to do anything. Now, Claire's the Gemara, Boy Rava. This is a very subtle Gemara, this Gemara. Boy Rava. Kite es yadai. You cut off his hand, v'lo yamdu, and they didn't evaluate it. Shiber es raglo. I mean, you know, Marshall really didn't like this guy. I'm telling you, it's like, even for Marshall, this is like, bloodthirsty, mamish bloodthirsty. So what happened over here is Kiteas Yada, he cut off Chatzkel's hand. V'lo do it. They didn't evaluate how much Marshall owes him. Shiber es Ragla, then he broke his foot. V'lo do. Simes Eine, blinded his eye. V'lo do. Ulebesayf Hirsh, and now he deafened him. Mao. The question is, do we evaluate with one evaluation, or do we evaluate each stage? Mi aminan kevan dolei amdu. Since we didn't evaluate each time, and since he basically wiped them out, he has to pay his whole value. V'yavle to make kulei b'hadadi adadi. Oy dilma, or perhaps chada amdina. We evaluate it each time. V'yavinonle. Now, what's the difference? Nafkamina debayla meisavle tsar ubaishis dechol chada v'chada. He has to pay for him the pain and the humiliation of each one, of each thing. When he cut off his hand, he humiliated him, it caused him pain. When he cut off his foot, Nehei de nezek, we delete over here. Taisa deletes ripui. That doesn't work. Nehei de nezek v'sheves, even though the damage and unemployment to kol chada v'chada lo yavinun lei, because he's going to give him now his full value. Because he's not, after he deafened him, we said he's not going to be able to do any work. The kaven the koyavle to make kule, command the kotle dummy. It's like he killed him. And therefore, he gives him his whole value. But the question is, do we have to give him for the pain and the humiliation? Does he give for each time? Now, the question is, what's really the other tzad? Of course he should pay. First of all, it's Marshall. Besides that, of course he should pay for each time. Each time he caused him pain. Each time he caused him humiliation. So, the way the Rishonim learn is that we do make, of course, Marshall pay. But the question is, do we view it as, in one evaluation, he completely humiliated him. He completely caused him pain. Or do we do each one separately? Now, I really don't know. I don't have it clear. That's why I said it's very subtle. I don't have it clear how you could do it all in one time. I don't even know what that means.
I don't understand one thing. That it doesn't talk about the Bezdin. The Bezdin is the major court has to decide what that's not what Marshall wanted to give him, what this one want. It's the Bezdin that said, you gotta give him $1 million, you gotta pay $1 million. Now, if you don't have the money, you're in trouble. You mess the guy up.
We are talking.
But the victim cannot say, I want this, I want that. It's what the court, the Bezdin.
Right, that's what the Gemara is telling us.
How much this to decide.
Saba, that's what the Gemara is telling us. What the...
But the Bezdin are first in all these things. It says, the Bezdin said so, and pay up.
Right, the Gemara is just clearing how the Bezdin...
As the Bezdin, each one from the Bezdin knows the law.
Right, Saba. The Gemara is just clearing what the Bezdin should do. That's what the Gemara is...
You have to tell what the Bezdin has to do. The Bezdin should know already what to do.
Well, this Gemara...
Judges for if they don't know what to do.
No, Saba, this Gemara is giving the rules to the Bezdin. That's what this is. This Gemara is giving the rules to the Bezdin. Now, says the Gemara...
If it's for each one, it'll cost them more money. If it's the whole, it'll be less.
I don't know what that means, evaluating the whole for pain. He had pain multiple times.
Right.
He had humiliation multiple times. So what's the...
Gemara doesn't... I understand what Rebbe's saying, but it's interesting that the Gemara, that once a person's deaf, you're paying for everything anyways. So that's the whole evaluation of the person.
One price for everything that doesn't decides. One price. Doesn't matter if you got pain. Case like that, that's how much you got to pay.
But the Torah has to tell you what to do. You don't make it up. That's the Talmud.
I didn't say I make it up. I'm saying the Bezdin.
I understand.
I can say I make it up. The Bezdin.
Could that mean the Amdua means when all at one time is that once he becomes a Cherish, that the whole Metzius of the person is shot now and he has to pay that, or is that the Chiluk?
No, it seems to be, there is one way to learn that way, but it seems to be Taisa says that you vadai pay for the humiliation. The guy is not dead. He has to continue living on. So you vadai pay for the humiliation and you vadai pay for the pain. Question is only to whether we evaluate it in one shot or we evaluate for each time. But again, as I said, I have no clue what that means to evaluate it at one time.
Does it mean they evaluate it after the fact because they didn't evaluate it yet individually? They go back and say, okay, he had pain for this and he had pain for
Then there shouldn't be a difference.
It's almost like, let's say you hijack a car and you get 1 week in jail. Now they found out you hijacked the car 10 times. So do you get 100 years in jail or you get less or what?
I've got to do with that. That's a different
I think that's all together.
That's a different story. We talk about these things.
So
So there the court will put you in jail. Decided to go on with it.
no, yeah, I mean,
But those days was different than today. Okay?
no,
See, Rabbi say, excuse me. See, the Art Scroll says one shot like Shimon. Since the victim certainly suffered humiliation and pain from each injury, it is possible that he should receive payment for those categories. On the other hand, once the assailant must pay the victim's entire value, the victim can no longer claim these two categories of payment. There's a Lechem Mishnah that says, like Shimon suggests. However, Taisa says that can't be. Now, Taisa says, since he suffered humiliation and pain with each injury, why should the fact that he was later made deaf, like I told you, prevent him from collecting those payments? Taisvus therefore holds that the victim may certainly collect them. The Gemara's question is whether separate appraisals are made for each injury, or is whether one appraisal is made as though the victims received the injuries all at once. I hear. I don't understand it, but I hear. In other words,
What does that mean?
what it means is that the Gemara is suggesting that maybe since it wasn't evaluated, right? Marshall did it where there wasn't a chance for it to evaluate. So do we evaluate as he did all of these things in one shot, at one time? And then if you evaluate it all at one time, the payment for the humiliation and the pain is going to be less than if you evaluate each one separately. Okay, I don't understand why you shouldn't do it separately. Poor Chatzkel, first of all, we're talking about Marshall. And second of all, poor Marshall suffered multiple types of pain and humiliation. Well, Barish is feeling very bad for Chatzkel. I am also. For that matter, I'm thinking of the electric chair. But anyway,
I have heated seats in my car. I got an electric chair.
Don't start out with Chesko.
now,
Hey, I already pounded his ears and his eyes and every part of his body. Who's next?
says the Gemara, the imtim tzaloimer kaven d'lo yamdua kayov le dmei kule bahadi adadi. You pay taka and you evaluate it one time. Mao. What if they did evaluate it separately? Mi amrinon came to avdu chada ba'il mei. So they has to pay for each time separately. Oy dilma came in the loy shalom, since he didn't pay it. Now yovle demei kula, he just does it with one evaluation. So the Gemara says this is going to be after left for Eliyahu Navi. He should come quickly. Teku tishbi yataretz kushis ribois. Now, boy Rabba, sheves ha'peiseyu b'domim mau. Unemployment that makes him worth less. What's the din? Here's an interesting thing. Marshall attacks Chatzkel and causes Chatzkel to have temporarily paralysis in his hand. So of course Marshall has to pay for full unemployment. Because if he would be a pitcher and he would be making $8,000 a game, so Marshall has to pay him $8,000 a game. The question though is, does he also have to pay him nezek? Because if he would be sold as a slave now, they wouldn't pay as much for him because maybe his arm won't get better. So maybe he has to pay nezek too. So the Gemara says, "Boy Rabba sheves ha'peiseyu b'domim mau." What happens if he gets temporarily worth less at the slave market? Hechi dami, kigan shikeyu al yodai. He hit him in the hand. V'tzamsa yodai. His hand shriveled. It got like temporary paralysis. V'seifei laza, but it's going to get better. My. Kevin is saying for he doesn't pay him anything in nezek because it's going to get better. Now if he would be sold at the slave market, he's worth less. Tajma, the Gemara brings an interesting raya. Hamaka avi v'imai, if let's say Chatzkel hits his father or his mother, v'lo yasa b'hem chabura, and he didn't make a wound, because if he made a wound, he would get misa, and then it would become leviramine, and he wouldn't pay for anything. But he hit them without giving him a wound. Or v'achayvel b'chaver b'yom kippur, or he hit somebody on Yom Kippur even with a wound. But on Yom Kippur there's no misa b'dei adam, it's only chorus. So therefore there's no kam leviramine. So in these cases, chayiv. But here comes the question. Chai bekulan, he has to pay nezik tzar, ripui, shevis, and baishas. So the Gemara asks, how could it be that you hit your father and mother and you don't make a chabura? And you're chayiv? Hai lo yasa chabura echidami. Lav kigain shiko al yadai, isn't talking about we hit him in the hand. V'soifei lazar, and he caused paralysis, and it's gonna come back. And it says that you have to pay chamisha dvarim, but ktani chayiv bekulan. So you see that you're chayiv for nezek, even though it's going to come back. We say that you have to pay for temporarily less value at the slave market. Says, well, no, that's not what it means. Imrei hacha b'mayaskinan kigain shechirshu v'lo yasa b'chabura. Where he deafened his father, and he didn't make a chabura. So therefore, he's not chayiv misa, so he has to pay for deafening him. And deafening him, he has to pay for all the different damages. Says, well, no. If you make your father deaf, you get the death penalty. Because the reason why he became deaf is because you caused him to bleed, and that caused him to become deaf. And bleeding is a chabura. That's the death penalty. If you make your father deaf, nerag, you're executed. There's no deafening below chabura without a wound, because tipsa dedama, a drop of blood, fell into the air. He's talking about where Chatzkel shaved his father, making him look like a clown. Shaved his father. Says the Gemara, that's our case. Gilchay mahader hader, that returns. And if you say you're paying chamisha dvarim, so you see you pay for nezek even though it's going to return. Behind a boy, and then that's our question. Says no, Amrei Acha b'mayaskinan kigain shesochu nasha. Chatzkel smeared on his father's head a depilatory, a permanent ointment that makes him bald forever. The loy hodar, it's not going to come back. Okay, we're going to just pause here a moment to turn the channel as I went way into Daf Pei Vav and